Okay, so we're going to talk for a few moments about language and the language that we use about ourselves and why that's important in the healing from relational trauma. So the folks that work with me know that when we're in session, when they're with me, when we're together in my office here, I am really attuned to the language that they're using when they're describing themselves, when they're telling a story, when they're explaining a situation. I'm really zoned in on how they are speaking about themselves. And a lot of times what I will hear in folks that are healing from relational trauma are things like, I'm beyond repair, I'm broken, I'm damaged, I'm too far gone, it's never going to get better, I'm never going to get better. From women, I hear a lot things like, I'm too much, I need too much, I'm needy, I'm too emotional. And I will gently pause kind of a session and I'll say to them, hey, I'm just going to pause here for a second. I'm going to say back to you what you just said to me. And we will just kind of gently bring to awareness the language that they're using when they're describing themselves. And a lot of times what I'll kind of bring up or I'll ask is, whose voice is that? Who would have said that to you? Who did say that to you in some way, shape, or form? And a lot of the times it's that attachment figure, that caregiver who was, for whatever reason, not able to be consistent and emotionally nurturing and attuned and unconditionally loving and supportive, okay? And so it's really developing this awareness that, oh my goodness, like as an adult now, I have this kind of voice, this narrator that's kind of constantly there, and I am not even aware of it. And so many of us do this, and we're just simply not aware. And so the whole point of me kind of gently bringing this up in session, and I do this consistently because I want folks to get used to this, and I don't do it in a judgmental way. It's just like, hey, like let's very compassionately, non-judgmentally, like let's just notice the language that you use there, okay? And I do this in every single session. I'm very consistent because I want folks to get into the habit of being able to do this when I am not with them. I want them to be able to become more mindful of the way that they're speaking about themselves on a very regular basis. And so when we do this in session and we do it consistently in session, it's easier then for them to kind of do this in their own lives, just to become more aware of the language that they're using. Want to also just kind of speak specifically to folks who are, who I'm going to use the word recovery here, who are, recovering from compulsive disorder, compulsive use of something, right? Compulsive use of alcohol or another substance, or compulsive use of pornography, or, there's 1,000 different things that we could clip in here. But I do not use the term, and I did for many, many years, I no longer use the term addict or alcoholic in my practice, okay? I do not use it. And I am going to tell you why. When somebody says, I'm an addict, or I'm an alcoholic, or you're an addict, or you're an alcoholic, it is simply not true. You're not that thing. You're not that behavior that you had to develop, that compulsive behavior that you had to develop as a way to survive. You are not that behavior. You are a whole human being who is inherently good, and you are complex. There are many parts to you, but at your very core, you are good. That's the self that we've been talking about. You are simply not an alcoholic. That is not who you are. That may be something that you had to do as a way to survive, but that's not who you are. And so I explain this to folks, and I have many people that I work with who are in very, very successful programs of recovery and 12-step programs, and I'm very clear with them about this, and they know this about me. And I just believe it's really important for them to know where I stand on this. And if they want to refer to themselves as an addict or alcoholic, absolutely, they get to do that. I'm not going to step in the way of that. I'm going to respect that and honor that in them, but I will not be referring to them that way. The other thing I just want to mention here is a term that's used in 12-step programs, which is character defects. defects of character. That's the term. And this is one of the steps in the 12 steps is, basically, quote unquote, listing out our character defects. And I believe what the founders of these programs kind of were going for here are, hey, like, let's develop an awareness about some of the defense mechanisms, some of the parts, some of the behaviors, armor that we developed along the way as a result of our trauma to survive that are no longer helping us, that are actually harming us, and they're harming those around us. I believe that was kind of what they were going for here. I can't say these men are dead now, but I'm thinking this is where they were coming from. So I do not like this term because I think it should be very obvious. Character defects. Basically, what is being said is your character is defective, which is false, blatantly false. And I will not use that term with folks at all. And so I also speak with folks who are engaged in these 12-step programs about my stance on that as well. And I think it's a very important dialogue for us to have here. If they want to use that term, again, that's up to them, and I will respect and honor that, but I will not be using that term with them. And okay, so what do we do with this? This is the language part. So I'm just going to keep this one very simple. I'm just going to encourage people, let's just develop an awareness. Let's start there, okay? Let's just become more aware of the language that we're using with ourselves. And let's just gently try to catch ourselves without judgment, with a lot of self-compassion when we're using this verbiage with ourselves. And we are just going to develop an awareness. I also would encourage folks to be aware of the inner dialogue. So that's that, kind of the thinking brain, right? That those conversations that we're having with ourselves, those stories that we're telling ourselves, those narratives that we have about ourselves that are internal, and how much that language, that self-punishing language, is showing up in these inner dialogues. If we're parents, bonus here, if we're parents, try to be mindful about if you're using any of this really harsh language with our children and gently catching ourselves when we're doing that, okay? Again, this is not about beating ourselves up. It's developing this awareness. Let's start there first. And moving forward, or going beyond this, we can talk about some of the tools that we've already reviewed here, using self-compassion in these moments and repairing with our children when necessary, and repairing with ourselves when necessary, okay? And I can also speak about that, what that looks like in a future post. But to just a kind of future state here, again, two of the biggest tools we're going to be using when we're really mindful about this language is we're going to be using self-compassion. We're going to be correcting that language really gently, okay, and in a nurturing way. And we're going to be doing repair with ourselves or maybe with our kiddos, okay? So I hope you found this helpful. Thanks for coming on here, being willing to learn and expand and grow.